Hello everyone and welcome to my revisit of the Castlevania Timeline. This is one I've been wanting to do for quite a while, so here we are. This time I am leaving 0 stones unturned when it comes to stories. So I'm spoiling these games completely dry. So without further ado, this is the Castlevania Timeline Revisit. Enjoy the show. Let's time travel back to the late 11th century, where the Crusades are still a thing, knights kill heretics in the name of God because the church told them to, and alchemy is very much frowned upon. This is the setup of things to come. In these Crusades, there are 2 very skilled knights, Matthias Kronkvist and Baron Leon Belmont. One night after a crusade, Matthias was struck with horrible news when his fair lady, Elisabetha Kronquist, unfortunately died of an illness, leaving Matthias of an empty shell of whom he once was, as well as being very bedridden. Fast forward a year later, Matthias told Leon that his fiancée, Sarah Trunthol, was taken by a vampire named Walter Bernard in his force of eternal night. Leon begged the church to let him go to save Sarah, but the church was all like, "We don't deal with monsters, now keep killing heretics in the name of God," and Leon is all like, "No," and dips, bringing us to the year 1094, in the events of today's game, Castlevania Lament of Innocence. Castlevania Lament of Innocence is a 3D action-adventure hack-and-slash RPG developed and published by Konami and was originally released for the PlayStation 2 back in October of 2003. Before getting a re-release version in June of 2013 on the PlayStation 3 store. It was supposed to tell the origin stories about the Belmont family and their soon-to-be undying rivalry with the Prince of Darkness himself, Dracula. But before Lament was even a thing actually, there was another Castlevania game that was meant to do the same thing, released back in 1998 on the Game Boy called Castlevania Legends, and it told the story of the first, and as of this moment, only female Belmont member named Sonia Belmont, but this game was later retconned out of the series. But anyways, here's the real question. Is Lament of Innocence any good, and is it something I could recommend to you? Let's find out. So the story of Lament of Innocence takes place in 1094, where Leon Belmont is dead set on trying to rescue his fiancée Sarah from the vampire Walter Bernard. Before he even reached the castle, Leon runs into an old man named Ronaldo Gandolfi, who gives Leon the Whip of Alchemy, a weapon that is supposed to be hella strong against the monsters Leon will soon be facing, along with enchanting Leon's gauntlets so he can absorb and use magic. Leon then makes his way to Walter's castle, and this is where the Metroidvania elements come into play. You see, we can't just knock down Walter's door and face him head on, we need to destroy 5 guardians. This includes a golem, Medusa, a succubus, an undead parasite, and finally another vampire named Joachim Armster. Now, after defeating the 5 guardians, we meet Walter. Leon tries to strike Walter with the Whip of Alchemy, but that does jack shit. But Walter does return Sarah. Leon takes Sarah back, and the game or not, since it's revealed that Walter bit Sarah, meaning Sarah will soon turn into a vampire. Ronaldo then tells Leon that in order to unlock the full power of the Whip of Alchemy, it needs a willing participant with a tainted soul. Sarah agrees to do with the ritual, and Leon strikes her down, turning the Whip of Alchemy into the legendary Whip of the Belmont clan itself, the Vampire Killer. Now with vengeance coursing through his veins, Leon rushes to Walter's castle for their final confrontation, and after defeating Walter, Death comes in and takes Walter's soul, and something called the Crimson Stone is now made, and Death gives it to his new master, Matthias Kronkvist, who is voiced by Crispin Freeman. Leon and Matthias later have a falling out since Leon simply refuses to have eternal life with Matthias, since, keep in mind, Matthias is still very butthurt that God took away Elizabetha, meaning that Matthias is now a vampire. Matthias later sends out Death to come kill Leon, which obviously fails spectacularly. Leon tells Death to give Matthias a message, basically saying that the vampire killer and Leon's descendants will one day destroy him for good, and that Leon will never forgive him for what he has become, before escaping Walter's collapsing castle, ending Castlevania Lament of Innocence. So, that was the story. Overall, it's really damn good. A good origin story of the rivalry, as well as the origin of the vampire killer, as well as tragedy, since usually your mission is to save the girl, but throws you for a loop when it's revealed that your dear woman cannot be saved. So overall, story's pretty fucking awesome. But now let's talk about gameplay. Gameplay of Lament has us take control of Leon Belmont, and the name of the game is Run, Whip, Use Magic or Items, and Die. Lament is meant to be like a 3D rendition of Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and I'd say it translated pretty well into this game. In terms of how Leon controls, well, imagine if Castlevania saw the gameplay of Devil May Cry and copied its gameplay minus the style and mixed in with a bit of God of War. The good God of War. If we press the square and triangle buttons at certain points, Leon can perform different moves, which have different damage outputs. We're not quite done with the gameplay yet, since after beating the main campaign, we can actually play as Joachim Armster, and he's okay. He's not bad, just not my style. We also have some optional bosses, including the elementals, which basically gives us a different elemental whip, and holy shit! Who the fuck are you? What the fuck are you? Actually, this is the Forgotten One, and he is said to be the hardest boss in the entire game, with each phase of his fight housing around 4,800 HP. Each, may I remind you. Multiply that by 3, and we're dealing with a boss that has 14,400 HP in total. I just suggest waiting until you get the vampire killer so you can take out the ice elemental, since the Forgotten One is weak to ice. In case you're wondering why he's chained up, according to the lore of the original Castlevania Timeline, due to his uncontrollable powers, he nearly destroyed and ended the entire world. And if we're going by his Lords of Shadow incarnation, he is basically said to have the power to rival that of fucking Satan himself. But anyways, Lament offers a very good bit of extra content, as well as pretty good optional bosses. Just don't fight the Forgotten One on a full stomach, because gross. Visually, I'd say this holds up pretty good. Now keep in mind, I'm playing the PS3 re-released version. Character models are pretty good, and the enemies look pretty monstrous, and in the Forgotten One's case, fucking disgusting. But OST wise, I'll be honest, I don't recall any tracks from this game outside of the main menu theme and the theme of Leon Belmont. Alright, so let's recap. I think the story is pretty great, gameplay is pretty good, visually it held up pretty good, and OST, outside of 2 tracks, isn't that good. Here are my closing thoughts. Overall, for a game telling an origin story as well as being its own thing, Castlevania Lament of Innocence delivers pretty well, I say. From good gameplay, a great story, and great voice talent, I say get this game. If you have a PS2, then go get it. If you have a PS3, then download it. If you don't have either, then emulate it, because this is a pretty damn good 3D Castlevania game. Overall, Castlevania Lament of Innocence gets my score of a 9 out of 10. If the OST were to have remixes of some of the more iconic Castlevania tracks like Vampire Killer, Bloody Tears, etc., then I will give this game a perfect 10. But as always, I want to know from you all, did you play Castlevania Lament of Innocence? Did you enjoy it, and is it something you could recommend to a friend? Leave your answers and more down in the comments. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and while you're here, consider subscribing and turn on the bell to be notified whenever I make a new video. As always, my social media links are down below. I've been Horror Kid, and I will see you all when I re-tackle Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse. Until then, take care, everybody. Bury the light deep within.